Hello and welcome, Katie here. Thanks so much for stopping by. I am back with another project for Imagine Crafts, and today I've got an emboss on emboss technique. So we're going to do 3D embossing folder, and we're going to put some embossing powder over the top. We're going to use the 3D Doily embossing folder from Sizzix and Tim Holtz, some white cardstock, some Versamark ink in Dazzle with the frost color, but any Versamark ink will work for this. I've got some iridescent opaque embossing powder, and I'm going to talk about dupe for that in a little bit. And then I've got some Memento inks in Summer Sky, Nautical Blue, and Teal Zeal. And I've got a couple stamps from the Greetery. I'm actually going to use the die from one of those, not the actual stamp. And then I've just got our trusty kitchen sponge. I did dampen one side of that just to moisten it a little bit. It's not wet through and through, just on one side, so that I could dip it into my ink pad and be able to pick up some of that ink a little bit easier. These ink pads, they're not super juicy, so it's not going to be like some ink pads where you can saturate your sponge with the ink. So adding a little bit of water to the sponge will definitely help to pick up the ink and spread it and blend it on your cardstock like I'm doing. And this is not a fancy technique. We did this in my last video with Imagine with the 3D embossing folder. We're using white cardstock this time. And, we're creating a wedding themed card. This actually really gives me beachy vibes. So this would be a good summer card. Or if you know somebody's getting married at the beach, I think it would work really well. But I'm just scuffing the sponge back and forth onto the cardstock. And Summer Sky is a pretty light ink, so, I have to go back in and dip it quite a bit to, get the color payoff that you're looking for. But it's a good base color since we're going to come in with Teal Zeal now. And the one thing I want to mention is you can kind of see that, there's some scuffing. There's there's spots that are splotchy and are darker. That's intentional. I want that because I want that additional texture to our background. The other thing I want to mention about these sponges is for the fact that they're so cheap. I mean, I got a pack of 6 of them for $3 at Wally World, and they are good blenders, honestly. Now, I mean, like I said, I'm being intentional with the scuffing that I'm doing there, but if you're a little bit more careful, you can see that you can really do some pretty good ink blending without having to spend a ton of money on blending tools. So that's just something to keep in mind. And with dye inks, you probably could, rinse them out and get that extra color out and dry them and reuse them again. So, that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so the last color I put on there was the Nautical Blue, and now I'm coming in with the Warm Breeze and VersaFine Clair and doing some text stamping for our background. I do stamp off and get, lighter generations of stamping to lighten up that text in the background. Now, I'm doing all this before I emboss the panel, which I did off camera. I ran it through the embossing folder, and now I did put some anti-static powder to really try to keep some of that excess powder off of areas that I don't want it, especially because this particular embossing folder is not a full page. It kind of cuts off and angles off in the corner. And then I'm just taking my Versamark ink pad and then gliding it over the top of the raised embossing. And then I'll throw on here some of the opaque iridescent embossing powder. Now, if you don't have this embossing powder, I figure a lot of people don't, just take some white embossing powder, any white embossing powder. And then if you've got like an holographic glitter or like a clear glitter or something like that that's, shimmery, but it's not colored. So it doesn't change the color of your white embossing powder. You don't see those flecks strongly. It's really a holographic glitter is the best one to go with, or a holographic embossing powder. You can mix those two together and you'll be able to create that embossing powder pretty easily. So now I'm just taking some May Arts twine in ivory. It's a lighter color, and creating like I'm wrapping a package. So we've got a small little knot, and then extending the string up and around, and instead of doing a bow, we've just got that little knot there that brings them together. And I've got some double-sided adhesive on the back, and you could leave this just like this. You don't have to add the foliage that I did. I just thought I would add a little bit more by adding the leaves on there, but you could totally leave it this way with the string going up and around. And I've got this matted on a piece of white cardstock. As you can see, that's what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to put it on a piece of Kraft cardstock. This happens to be Oatmeal. It's what the color is. It's the old Fun Stamper's Journey and Spellbinders cardstock. But this gives me beachy vibes all the way. So good wedding card, good anniversary card. Of course, you could change the sentiment out and make it a birthday card, whatever you like. But here I had some extra leaves dies that I had cut out with some pearlized vellum, and I'm just adhering them on with some on point glue. And then I didn't want to cover up our double embossing with more of the vellum solid foliage leaves. So I found that, I had that leafy branch that die cut open leaves from Pink Fresh Studio, and I trimmed them out, to use pieces here and there and bunches, and then tuck it in just to give a little bit extra dimension without taking away from our double embossing. And then that Always and Forever, you saw through the video, I had different things on there, but I ended up going with a hot foil plate from Spellbinders, and that comes from the mini Everyday Sentiments stamp set, hot foil stamp set, and I use Sky Bright hot foil for that. But that's going to wrap it up, my friends. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Be sure and check the description box below for the products used, and thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next video.